Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today's case is the unsolved murder of Barbara and Patricia Grimes, also known as the Grimes sisters. So Barbara was 15 and Patricia was 12, and they were actually two of 7 children born to Loretta and Joseph Grimes. Because they were so close in age, the girls were just described as being inseparable. They did everything together, they had a lot in common. They were both really sweet girls that were doing good in school and just very nice. They shared something else in common as well, which is that they were both huge fans of Elvis. And when I say huge fans, I mean huge. Like, they'd joined an official fan club. They were obsessed with him. So on December 28th, 1956, both girls were actually going to the Brighton Park Theatre to watch Love Me Tender, which was the Elvis Presley film. And this would actually be the 11th time that they've gone to see this film. That's how much they loved him. So the theatre was about 1.5 miles away from the house, and they'd done this trip so many times, but no one actually knows whether they walked or got bus there. I think the girls were carrying about £2.50, which obviously back in them days was a lot more money than it is nowadays. So they could have got the bus or they could have walked, but it wasn't that far. So during the intermission of the film, about 9:30, one of the girls' school friends saw the girls queuing for popcorn outside and said that they seemed really happy and in good spirits. Both girls actually stayed for the second viewing of the film. They obviously loved it, and this meant that they would have got home about 11:45. So their mum Loretta was actually waiting up for them to get home, obviously expecting them back at around that time. But then it got to midnight and she was getting a bit worried, so she sent their oldest sister Teresa and their brother Joey to go wait by the bus stop that was closest to their house for the girls to come back. After 3 different buses had gone past without the girls getting off, Teresa and Joey decided to call it quits and they went home to tell their mum. So while Teresa and Joey had been at the bus stop, Loretta had actually called around, calling the girls' school friends to make sure that they were at their house and that they'd not gone anywhere else. But nobody had heard from them, so on 2:15 AM on the 29th of December, Loretta called the police to report the girls as missing. The girls' disappearance sparked one of the biggest missing persons cases in Cook County to date, and hundreds and hundreds of officers were put on the case, and also a special task force was set up dedicated to finding the girls. A huge ground search was done with hundreds of volunteers, and the police were going door to door to ask anyone if they'd seen the girls or if they'd heard anything from them. Over 300,000 people had been questioned regarding the girls, and 2,000 had actually been put under further interrogation. 2 arrests were actually made pretty quickly after one of the guys confessed that him and his friend had murdered the girls, but the charges were dropped after the guy said that he lied about the confession, he didn't actually do it, and that the police had basically coerced him into doing this confession after hours and hours of interrogation. Despite all this investigation and all of the media appeals that the police were doing, there wasn't really any evidence. It seemed like the girls had just disappeared into thin air. So the main theory that police were going with was that the girls had just run away of their own accord. Several teenagers that were nearby that theatre on the night that the girls disappeared did say that they think they saw them getting into a Mercury model car with somebody that resembled Elvis Presley. Loretta and Joseph were absolutely adamant that their daughters had not run away. They knew their daughters and they knew that they wouldn't just do this and not tell anyone where they was going. There'd actually been reported sightings of the girls way up to January 9th, so the police were just thinking they've run away, they've gone to stay with some boys, they'll come home, whatever. The possibility of the girls running away to go see Elvis Presley in concert in Nashville, Tennessee was thrown about, but also there was only 12 and 15 and they didn't have that much money on them to be able to get that far. So I don't really know why they thought that, but also some people thought that they were just running away to kind of emulate Presley's lifestyle, and because they were such huge fans. On January 19th, an official statement was released from Presley's estate saying to the girls, if you were good Presley fans, you would go home and ease your mother's worries. And he actually did a personal radio broadcast to the girls pleading them to go home. On January 22nd, a construction worker named Leonard Prescott was driving along a country lane when he saw 2 things that looked like mannequins. He said they were flesh-coloured things off to the side of the road behind a guardrail. He got a bit of a funny feeling about this, so he actually went back later on with his wife Marie to look at what these mannequins were, and Marie actually fainted upon discovering that these were in fact the frozen naked bodies of Barbara and Patricia Grimes. So obviously immediately the police were called and they actually got Joseph Grimes up to identify the body of his daughters. It was believed that the girls were actually driven to this location and then either dragged or lifted from the car. They weren't killed there. 3 wounds were found on Barbara's chest that resembled those made with like ice picks, and bruises and blunt force trauma were found on both of the girls' bodies. They didn't find much evidence at the scene, but police were very criticised during this because they let untrained individuals on the scene to help look for evidence, meaning that anything that was there could have been trampled on or misplaced, and they basically just compromised the full crime scene. The bodies were examined for over 5 hours each, and the forensic pathologist that was doing the autopsies was unable to identify a cause of death or a day of death. They did an examination of the girls' stomach contents, which showed the last meals and snacks that they'd eaten on the 28th of December, the day that they went missing. Therefore, they believe that they would have died within 5 hours of last being seen, roughly. The official cause of death was actually listed as shock and exposure after the pathologist had kind of like eliminated other possibilities. So it's concluded that the wounds that were found on Barbara's chest were actually done after she'd already died, and they were unable to kind of work out which wounds had actually been inflicted and which ones could have been put down to like rodent bites because they'd been out there for such a long time. Toxicology results on the girls showed that they'd not been drugged or they'd not drank alcohol before their death. So the guy that I mentioned earlier that was coerced into a confession by the police was named Edward Bedwell. He was a 21-year-old drifter from Tennessee, and he'd actually been evicted from his house in November 1956. In the weeks before the girls' murder, he was working as a dishwasher in a Chicago Skid Row restaurant. It was said that he also resembled Elvis, and he was very, very tall. People just said that he looked like him. So a couple that owned the restaurant named John and Millie told police that he had actually been in the restaurant with 2 young girls that resembled the Grimes sisters in the early morning of December 30th. After police found this out, Bedwell was arrested and put under interrogation for 3 whole days. Initially, he denied all claims and said that John and Millie just had mistaken these girls. He did say that he was with some young girls, but they weren't the Grimes sisters. However, he was formally charged with the girls' murders after signing a 14-page confession. Edward said that him and his friend had taken the girls, and when they refused his advances, he beat them to death and threw them in that ditch near the road. Now, the autopsy of the girls also supported that this confession was fake, as Bedwell had said that they'd been feeding them hot dogs and stuff before their death, but no hot dogs were ever found in their stomach contents, and also the girls had not been beaten to death like he said. Another suspect was 17-year-old Max Fleek. Now, because of his age, he was actually protected by Illinois laws that said that they basically couldn't force him to do a polygraph test. The police captain persuaded him eventually to do one, and when he was doing this test, he actually confessed to the murder of the girls. Now again, because he was so young, this actually couldn't be used as evidence. Like, they couldn't use this against him because it just wasn't legal. They had no legal means to arrest him and charge him with anything. Now, there was also no physical evidence either like linking him to the crimes, so they just had to let him go. After the murder of their daughters, Loretta Grimes was obviously unable to work and earn money for the family, so friends and neighbours actually grouped together to raise funds for her, and she was able to pay off her mortgage and also pay to bury the girls. A year after the girls' murders, Loretta actually came out and made a public statement saying that she believed that the girls had been killed by someone that they knew. She said that no matter how cold it was outside, the girls would not have put themselves in a position to get a hair, and they would not have got into a car with someone that they know. So that is today's case. Now, a part of me wonders if this case happened now, whether we'd be able to have caught the person that did it. Obviously, it was in the 50s, so they didn't have the same like advances in police work and stuff like that, and it's just so sad that no one was ever brought to justice for it. So thank you for watching, guys, and thank you to Leah for recommending this case to me. I'd never actually heard about it before researching it. As always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and leave any comments below, whether it's feedback or new video ideas. It's all very, very appreciated, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.